A while ago, I was at a mall. Now, I've been inside a mall maybe 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years, so it's been a while. Pre-pandemic, I wasn't a frequent patron at malls, but it's safe to say I made the trek more than about once a year. And because it had been a very long time, it felt new, and it felt a bit shocking. The lights, the colors, the larger than life posters telling me all the things that I need and should want felt a bit overwhelming. Apparently, the right face cream or the right shampoo or the right purse will make me feel better about myself and the world. Who knew it could be so easy? The trouble is, purses wear out. Skin and hair, even when pampered with the right treatments, do age. The satisfaction promised by the ads is at best temporary. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm human. I have a body and senses, and I do find some satisfaction in physical time-based things. A good meal, a comfortable blanket, a good haircut. These are all things I enjoy, but I know that they are not permanent pleasures. The advertisers know it too, and so they turn up the volume, tweaking labels, revising logos, changing ads. Their business is to tell me that I am not enough. They tell me I'm worth it, but they're quick to jump in with suggestions about what I need to be good enough. And that's just the messages that bombard us regarding our physical selves. When I put the words self-help into the book search in Amazon, I was flooded with over 60,000 titles. From Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People to one I'd not heard of before, 14 Habits That Are Holding You Back from Happiness. The titles go on and on and on. Clearly, people, there are those out there who think we have some work to do. And we do have work to do. We always will. I sometimes imagine that we're all walking around with tiny tattoos that read "under construction." And I also imagine a second tiny tattoo, one that reads "perfect, just the way I am." I believe both of these things, these seemingly contrary things. My first reaction is that our striving for more and for better, that they both get in the way of contentment. And I think sometimes that that's a modern issue, but after just a bit of looking, I realize it's actually just a human issue. The Tao Te Ching, over 2,500 years old, has this to say on the topic. There is no greater calamity than not knowing what is enough. No greater curse than to covet. No greater tragedy than discontentment. And the worst of all faults, it continues, is wanting more, always. Wow. We find a similar sentiment in the Christian text, Matthew chapter 6. Can any of you add a single hour to the length of your life by worrying? And why do you worry about clothes? Consider the lilies in the field and how they grow. They don't work or spin yarn, but I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was clothed like one of them. So, stop fussing is the message that the ancient teachers would have us understand. What you have is enough. Wanting more won't make you better, and it may very well erode your sense of peace. I think it's fair to say that's not a message I'm going to see at the mall very soon. Maybe humans have always needed to be reminded of the value of contentment, but I can't help but think that we, with mass media and social media, need the reminder even more than some earlier people may have. In fact, studies are beginning to show us that the seemingly steady diet of images many of us consume through Facebook, Instagram, and other social media can leave us feeling profoundly discontent. And with so many things, it's likely a balancing act. The connections and community that many enjoy via their phones and computers can have a positive effect. But the curated versions of other people's lives we see there can enforce the idea that our own lives are lacking, which is the opposite of contentment. There was a Canadian Internet Use Survey in 2018, and it gave us some information. Individuals aged 15 to 64, I don't know why they didn't ask people who were older than 64, but 15 to 64 were asked about their use of websites and apps that allowed them to share and create their own content while viewing and interacting with the content of others. We learned that a lot of people use these sites. 9 in 10 of the people who were 15 to 34 use them, 8 in 10 of those who were 35 to 49, and 6 in 10 of those who were 50 to 64. That's a lot of Canadians. And then the survey asked about 6 possible impacts. They listed lost sleep, difficulties concentrating on tasks or activities, reduction in physical activity, feelings of anxiety or depression, feeling envious of the lives of others, and feelings of frustration and anger. About 20% of the people reported at least some of these. Perhaps more concerning is that the negative impacts were more pronounced in the younger people. We value our well-being, yet many of us struggle to give it the attention it deserves. There are distractions and pursuits that are designed to make it more difficult to settle into ourselves and focus on the things that might actually lead to higher levels of contentment. There's a magazine, you can find it online, Greater Good magazine, published by the University of California at Berkeley. It features science-based research on factors that promote compassion and well-being. Recently, they published an article by Daniel Cardero highlighting some of his research. In 2014, he and his team traveled to a previously uncontacted village in the Himalayas in eastern Bhutan. Their work there involved showing pictures of human faces expressing a variety of emotions. There was a long list of potential universal emotions, from shame to joy to embarrassment, to see if they could be recognized by people who had no experience of the outside world. When the team showed the villagers dozens of facial and vocal expressions, they recognized most of the expressions with relatively high accuracy. So there's some universality to the way our faces, we use our faces to express feelings and emotions. But when they got to the face that showed a sense of contentment, the reaction was different. When they were working to translate the reactions, their guide and translator stopped when they reached the face with an expression of contentment. And the translator said, "In our culture, this emotion is very special. It is the highest achievement of human well-being, and it is what the greatest enlightened masters have been writing about for thousands of years." When asked for the translation of the word, he explained that it was tricky and said the closest thing is that it's a very deep and spiritual word that means knowledge of enough. It basically means that right here, right now, everything is as it should be, regardless of what you are experiencing outside yourself. Now, I always find the root of words interesting, but in this case, I find it really quite enlightening. The English word contentment comes from the Latin word contentus, which means held together or intact and whole. Originally, contentus was used to describe containers, literally things like cups and barrels and buckets. And later, the word evolved into something that could reflect onto a person, a feeling of enough, one who feels intact or whole. Contentment then asks, how complete are you as a human being? Most human emotions require external input. They're based on reactions to relationships with events and other people. Contentment, on the other hand, requires no external input and is entirely sourced from within. Instead of seeking external sources for happiness, which are always going to be out of our control, contentment offers stability. If contentment is something we can aspire to, it's useful to know what it's not. But knowing it, recognizing it, doesn't make it easily attainable. I think some of us just have temperaments that are more inclined towards contentment. The strong messages we receive make it hard to even understand contentment rather than happiness as the goal. Some of us, for reasons of brain chemistry or other circumstances, will find it more elusive. We spend a lot of time in our lives striving for more, striving for happiness. And I, for some reason, have known for a long time that happiness was fleeting. I don't know why I figured out when I was in about grade 6 or so that happiness, while a lovely thing, was not the goal. I remember walking home from school looking at cloud formations and birds and being struck by the notion that it would be better to strive to be content than it would be to strive to be happy. More than a few years have passed since that walk home from school, and I think I was right. And I also think I was very fortunate to have that insight when I did. On reflection, I know I had some great teachers. My husband used to say that my grandma was like the Buddha. She found joy in the loons returning to the lake, even though her husband of 60 years had just died. She knew that stuffing envelopes with newsletters for her church was worthwhile, even if she couldn't contribute in other ways. I was lucky to have her as an example and to have her genes. Contentment and happiness are not the same things. Certainly, both can at times be a bit elusive, but I believe that contentment is longer lasting and makes a greater contribution to our well-being. I also see evidence that it equips us to deal with the troubles of life, the injustice, and the hurts that are always present. There are things we can do, practices we can cultivate that will move us in the direction of contentment. That feels worthwhile to me. Each of us must find the practices that work for us. Mine may not appeal to you. They may not fit. The monthly Soul Matters package, and if you aren't aware, Soul Matters is a subscription-based resource for UU congregations. The monthly package on contentment offers a few suggestions for practices that can help us on our journey to contentment. They are, and this one's a tall order perhaps, want what you have. This is a basic gratitude practice. Make a list of other things you are grateful for at the end of the day. And their second one is don't make comparisons. If we go through the day comparing our situation with another's, we'll come up short, feeling either second-rate or deprived. The Baal Shem Tov, a great Jewish teacher, said, "Compare not yourself with anyone else, lest you spoil God's curriculum." And the Greater Good article that I referenced earlier makes some other suggestions. Practice mindfulness. This one may not be for you. Some of us think it seems a little bit out there, but I don't know that it has to be. Mindfulness is the cultivation of focused attention to the present moment without judging your experiences as good or bad. It is one of the most well-studied practices for calming down the body and mind. In fact, one of the coached therapies for people who are feeling anxious is to notice things around them, something they can see and touch or hear. A second one from Greater Good is reevaluate your well-being contingencies. We all have well-being contingencies. When I have X number of dollars in the bank, I'll feel safe. Or when I retire, I can begin to do the things I want. When my kids get to be X number of years old or can do X things, then I'll know that my work as a parent has meant something. It's okay to have goals, but if we don't evaluate and reevaluate them, we may really be telling ourselves that our well-being needs to wait. And also from Greater Good magazine is accept all emotions. This is tough and most of us don't like it. But feelings come and go. Knowing that is important because if we don't, we hold on to some and we deny other parts of our human experience. Feeling whole now, feeling complete, requires us to do so even when we're sad or embarrassed or anything else. The radical appreciation of all of life's experience is a cornerstone to contentment, which is the idea that right here, right now, everything is okay. Contentment is the underlying acceptance of what it means to be human. So here we are, Thanksgiving Sunday, a holiday which was traditionally in Canada a harvest festival. A Sunday when churches traditionally encouraged people to pause, to appreciate the bounty of the earth, and to share what they had. Giving thanks to God may not work for some of you, at least not in the way that it might for others. But that doesn't mean that we can't be thankful, that we can't cultivate gratitude, And we can't develop practices that help us foster a sense of contentment. You are, and I am, whole. We are enough, and we are imperfect. Perfectly so. I'm not saying we should all just shrug and say, that's it, I don't need to do anymore. I don't need to grow anymore. But I do think that to be okay with where you are today at this stage of the journey is an important thing to do. Thanksgiving seems like a good day to think about contentment and to play around with practices that help us to try and focus on those things that seem to fit best for us. For me, the clue is found in that long ago walk home from school, watching clouds, observing the birds. I've learned that imagining a small lake or watching the silhouette of branches against the sky is enough to ground me, to help me bring all the spinning bits back under control, and to feel contained, to feel content again. There's a Wendell Berry poem, and it really rings true for me, and it seems like a good place for me to end these reflections. Berry wrote, "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in its beauty on the water, and where the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with the forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free." Thank you. We are going to sing together, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth.
Could I ask you to stand again, please? Number 21, and we'll do 4 verses. It's pretty quick.